Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video.
My wife and I finally decided to tie a knot after dating for over 6 years. We had always been infatuated with one another. We knew that it would only be a matter of time before we decided to call it forever. Everything about my in-laws seemed normal, and everyone seemed friendly and caring. Shortly after the wedding, I noticed that her sister's husband's behavior towards my wife was a bit too daring and loving. I saw how weird his tone of speech with my wife was, and I was becoming more convinced by the passing moment that his heart wasn't full of familial sentiments. I noticed throughout the months that my sister-in-law's husband was making active efforts to impress my wife and gain her validation like a helpless teenager drowning in love. He would stop by every morning to say hello exclusively to my wife, which I tried explaining by the fact that we lived on shared land and were basically neighbors, sharing the same living address. He would buy her gifts and shower her with all sorts of romantic gestures, trying to lure her into something more than friendly. He would even try to kiss her on her cheek more than once, saying that it was his family's way of greeting. Only I had noticed how it was closer to the mouth than the cheek, but never mentioned it to not disrespect anyone. One time at a family gathering during the holiday season, my wife had been a hostess. She prepared the meals, made sure to handle everybody's requests with care. She called every one of the guests and made their favorite meals or took into consideration everybody's preferences. The evening had come and my wife, the amazing woman she was, had handled it with absolute grace. The meals were set in stone before the guests even arrived, and the tables were ready and prepared pretty much hours before anyone arrived. Dinner time had come and we sat around the table. My wife and I sat across from each other at the ends of the table, whilst the sister and her husband sat on either side of her end. We all said grace and started consuming the beautiful meal that my wife had prepared. Everyone made sure to thank her for being meticulous with preparing the food and caring for everyone's needs. One person that made sure to praise her, probably more than necessary, even for me, was my sister-in-law's husband. He made sure to praise her cooking skills and valued me as a wife at every bite he took. It was starting to become evident to everyone that the air was getting awkward and uncomfortable. After everyone had eaten, I helped my wife with the cleaning alongside some of the family's women. I pulled her aside and I asked her if she noticed how strange sister-in-law's husband was that night. She remained silent for a moment, letting me blabber before confessing that he had indeed made her feel extremely uncomfortable. She noticed how he was targeting her with unnecessary compliments on her ability to wife someone up or handle a house like a charming woman, and all sorts of misplaced flirtatious statements. After getting the confirmation that I wasn't fooling myself and that he was indeed acting out of his place, I walked outside to the garden and asked if I could have a word in private with him. After he insisted that there was nothing personal to discuss and that whatever I wanted to say, I should say in front of the family. I told him that he needs to stop flirting with my wife by giving her gifts out of occasions, behind his wife's back, and touching her whenever it's not necessary, and showering her with compliments, and indulging in one-sided flirting with her because he's never going to have a chance with her, and he was making her and me, as well as everyone around us, highly uncomfortable by his predatory actions. I told him I would take no more of his nonsense and that if I should ever see him handling, talking, or interacting with my wife in a way that I don't approve of, he'll have to suffer the consequences of his own actions. He denied that he had ever flirted with the thought of my wife as anything more than a sister and said that he only kept the gifts a secret from his wife because they were suffering financially. He was insisting on gifting my wife things because he treats her like a little sister. He liked giving items to people. He was clearly lying because he drove the most expensive car in the family, and he was the oldest in-law, so he should know better than to lie to his wife to do childish things like that. He was explicitly choosing to respond to the things that didn't make him look like a villain. After that happened, the conversation went quiet and awkward, and everyone dismissed themselves to their homes soon after. The next day, my mother-in-law and father-in-law called my wife and me over to have dinner and brought up the argument that had taken place the day before. My wife and I informed them that we'd be moving out of that piece of land and seeking a more comfortable estate. My parents-in-law responded unexpectedly. They told us that they thought we were overreacting, that there must be a reasonable thing to do about the situation. They accused me of lying and told me that he had informed them of my previous affairs, which is absolutely false. I never cheated on my wife and never intended to do so because I love her with my whole soul. The conversation slowly became more aggressive and dismissive of my claims until my wife and I got too irritated. I could take no more of their nonsense. We stormed out of the house, unable to believe that the family was conspiring with sister-in-law's husband's attempts to break apart my marriage and cover up for his messes. When I told my family that my sister-in-law's husband had a crush on my wife and was trying to get her by breaking apart our marriage and charming her with his predatory actions, even in front of our family, they were unable to believe it and felt extremely disappointed in my parents-in-law. Not the a-hole. I would be disappointed in your family-in-law too. If that happened to my son, I would call in and make sure to let them know just how messed up what they'd done was. They shouldn't have sided with him simply because he's the oldest, or they've known him longer because he's clearly the one in the wrong here. Personally speaking, if I ever see anyone handling my wife like that, I would snap and break a bone or two. But props to you for keeping your cool and taking the situation like a healthy adult with your wife and keeping your relationship strong with her. Yeah, I would probably beat the living daylight out of that man too. But the family really did you dirty by taking his side and believing his lies instead of trusting what they had seen with their own eyes. I would even go as far as saying that it's probably because they are equally as weird and messed up as he is if they're going to back him up like that. You and your wife should probably stay as far away from them as you possibly can for a while, especially during family gatherings where they can team up on you and make you feel guilty for it, because you're not in the wrong here, buddy. I totally think you're not the a-hole. I really applaud you for taking your own defense and talking to your wife before taking action. I would not have been able to keep my calm. I just think you should know that not talking to your in-laws is possibly the best choice you can make at the moment, as they're unwilling to support you and will only bring you down if you let them. Not the a-hole. I went on a vacation to a beach hotel a few years ago with my husband, and I remember the friend who took us was making active moves on my husband, trying to get his attention and stay alone with him. I felt infuriated and confronted her about it immediately, and my husband supported me as we chose to shut her off and cut the vacation short. I can relate to your story in a sense, but I can't imagine trying to keep calm and acting rationally about something that goes on for months and a person who's supposed to be family. You made the right decision by cutting off the family as long as it makes you and your partner content and secure in the relationship. I wish you all the best, you and your wife, my friend. Next story. I, 25 male, live together with my roommate and her boyfriend. While we do live in the US, I'm not American myself. I've never really celebrated Thanksgiving, nor do I have relatives here to celebrate with. But I do understand it's a pretty big and important holiday for Americans. Now, my roommate wants to invite their families for Thanksgiving, the first time they host, and also use the chance to inform their family about their plans to get married. They approached me and asked if they could have the kitchen living room. I was fine with that. I just asked what time their families would come, so I would spend the evening in my room and stay out of their way. But turns out their plans were a lot more extensive. 1, they wanted to do a 3-day event. First day, her family, second day, his family, third day, friends. 2, they planned to make a huge feast with several days preparation, decorating, and so on. 3, one of her cousins would have to stay overnight because he needs to travel quite far away, and they were hoping that the cousin could sleep in my room. For all these reasons, they just don't want me to be in my room. They want me completely out of the house for 3 days. I could stay in a hotel, have a mini vacation, was their argument. And that was the part where we started arguing. I have no problem spending 3 evenings in my room and giving them space. One-time thing, no problem. I have no problem with them using the kitchen for hours, days to prepare the food. I have no problem with the decoration. But I will not have some stranger sleep in my room, nor do I want to go on a mini vacation. Plus, who would pay for the hotel? 'Cause I definitely won't. They told me I don't understand because I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, that this is a one-time thing. I told them I'm already compromising a lot by staying in my room for 3 days, despite equally paying rent and everything. Her boyfriend made a comment about how I don't understand because my family is a messed up mess, and the rest of the conversation was dissolved into a shouting match and throwing insults on both sides, I admit. The next day, her aunt came to visit. She pulled out a couple $100 and told me this would be enough to cover the cost for a very nice hotel, plus some spending money. I refused, citing again that my room is off limits and I do not just want to get kicked out of my home. Money is not even the issue. As you can guess, the mood has been pretty awful and I get pretty much constant side remarks from my roommate. Edit. Some people mentioned me being invited to the event. We're not really friends or anything like that. We're cordial as roommates but have no deeper social interactions. To me, it would be pretty weird to be invited to a meal with them and their families. Edit 2. Few people asked why they insist that the cousin sleeps in my room and I in the hotel, not the other way around. I don't really know. They only gave me the reason that the cousin would help with preparations and had a long travel time. My guess is they just wanted a reason to get me out completely, but that is speculation on my part. Not the a-hole. Why would you ever leave your home? If it's not good enough for them, you stay in your room. Tell your roommate they need to take themselves somewhere else for Thanksgiving. It's rude as F that they would have Thanksgiving at your place and not invite you anyway. It's your room, end of the story. You pay rent for it, not them. If the aunt can pay for your hotel room, the aunt can pay for the cousin's hotel room. Not the a-hole. Wow, the part that shocked me the most is the aunt literally paying you to get out of your home. How rude and forceful. You're not the a-hole at all. Your roommates are unreasonable to request you to give up the personal space of your room for their cousin. That's absolutely not on. If they want the luxury of space to themselves, then they should go find somewhere else to live. Stand your ground. Not the a-hole, but your roommate and their family are going to believe that you are, and you have to live with your roommate, and by extension, will have some minimal interaction in the future with their family. You know you're in the right, we know you're in the right, and a reasonable person would know you're in the right. But you aren't dealing with reasonable people here, so the normal rules don't apply. It's a tough choice to make, but you're going to have to choose whether to take the path of least resistance and stay in a hotel, or stand up for yourself and have a more uncomfortable living situation as you become the villain in your roommate's story. Both choices suck in their own way because you've been put in a sucky position by unreasonable people. The question here isn't really if you're the a-hole, it's how you can cope in this situation. Good luck, and for what it's worth, you aren't the a-hole to anyone reasonable. Next story. One of my cousins is engaged and they're having a wedding in another state because his future wife has 2 relatives who live there. They're in their 90s and can't travel easily. Everyone else who's invited to the wedding is not as old and is healthy and would have no problem making the 2.5-hour drive. My parents got upset when they found out about the wedding being there because it means one of my brothers can't go. Legally, he can't leave the state right now because of legal issues. The cousin who's getting married is the son of my mom's sister. When my parents got upset, my aunt and some other relatives tried to convince my cousin's future wife to change the wedding venue. My cousin basically told them to leave her alone and shove it and said he isn't having 2 90-plus-year-olds being taken on an uncomfortable car trip that would be at least 2 hours away. The venue close to the state border that my mom and aunt and relatives suggested were also booked up and my cousin would have to push his wedding back by a lot. He said the wedding is happening at the original venue, which is in another state and 10 minutes away from the nursing home. I'm an usher at the wedding and my mom and aunt are a bit mad. I won't try to convince my cousin to move the venue. My brother can't be an usher because of this. My dad also agrees even though he isn't as vocal as my mom is. Personally, I don't think it's any of my business. The last time my mom and aunt asked me to talk to my cousin on behalf of my brother, I said he's an adult who can do it himself and he has no one to blame but himself because all her legal issues are his own fault and no one else's. My mom said the legal problems ruined his life and I said he did it himself. Now my parents, brother, aunt, and various other relatives are mad at me for saying my brother ruined his own life and caused his own problems because they all got told what I said. Am I the a-hole for saying that my brother ruined his own life and it's no one else's problem but his? Since I know people will ask me what he did. His girlfriend was in a car accident. He went to the scene and pretended to be a random pedestrian who saw everything from the sidewalk to the cops and the insurance company. He lied about the other driver causing the incident even though his girlfriend did. The other driver and another car who wasn't involved both had dash cameras that contradicted what he said and showed he wasn't even on the sidewalk. He also forgot the car was registered to both of them, so the insurance company and the cops figured out he wasn't a random witness. There was a criminal court case and a lawsuit he had to go through, and another court case for breaking the terms of his probation from his first case. He's still dealing with the fallout and will be many years. It's not relevant to the question, but I know people will be curious. Not the a-hole. Cousin can have their wedding wherever they want. Also, my brother is an a-hole. I get that he was trying to protect his girlfriend by lying to the police, and he and she may think their deceived selfishness was noble if they think only of themselves. But it was pretty cruel to the driver's girlfriend to be hit. Innocent, had car damage, possibly injured, and if brother girlfriend had convinced the police, the innocent driver could have faced the charges for lying on top of all of that. Gotta ask, who on earth does the family think is to blame for brother's legal problems, if not brother? Who do they think violated brother's parole, if not brother? The family is doing the brother no favors if they're babying him, and it sounds like they are. If he has mommy making calls too about cousin and telling him he's innocent of his own actions. Not the a-hole, and good on your cousin for sticking to his plans. Your brother did this to himself. I have no clue why your family would be so annoyed at you. It's his fault, and everyone who isn't paying for the wedding should mind their own business. Your brother is a complete idiot. He tried to commit insurance fraud. It's your cousin's wedding. If the cousin wanted a destination wedding, what are they gonna do? Cry about it still? They need to get over themselves, and you were being honest about what your brother did. Don't know why your family was having a hard time telling him he messed up. My cousin and his future wife didn't take any money from either of their families for the exact reason of wanting no one to tell them what kind of wedding to have. I think it was a smart decision. What I find interesting in the story is never once did you say your brother asked to have the wedding moved, or asked you to speak to your cousin for him, or that he called your cousin to ask him to change anything. It sounds like all the drama is coming from your mom and aunt. Does your brother have a problem with this? Or does he just accept that this is the way it is and he has to deal with it? Anyway, you're not the a-hole. Your brother's an adult, your cousin's an adult. If they have a problem with each other, they can talk to each other. Everybody else can stay out of it. It's not your place, and it's sad that your family is trying to push your cousin to change the venue and possibly the date of the wedding. I support your comment. Your brother put himself in this predicament and he has to deal with the consequences of his lie. Sad that the family isn't holding him responsible for his actions.